Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today I'm going to be playing Dredge, but I'm going to be playing a different variation of Dredge. This is Izzet Dredge. This is actually a list I took from the Dread Master on Magic Online, the Daddy, who is, if you go and look at any sort of like place like MTG Goldfish and you look at like 5.0 deck lists, most of them are from the Daddy. He's definitely the go-to person for Dredge. So why is this deck playing Izzet, effectively? So the main reason is your mana base is Cephalic Colosseums and Fiery Islets. So you basically, half of your lands are actually draw spells, which is great when that's what you want to do and dredge some more cards. It also means that enablers in Dredge have always generally been red-blue anyway, your Careful Studies, your Faithless Lootings. Obviously we can't fit in any Putrid Imps here, we're just on the looting and study plan and breakthroughs. We do also have these griefs that we're playing on casting, and we've got Ox of Agonis as another sort of red spell that we can cast off of our mana base that's going to be useful for dredging. Now, this build is a bit different to me. I'm not used to playing dredge decks that don't have bridge from below. That's completely wild to me, which is why I wanted to try this deck out. So basically we're just trying to leverage Narcomoebas and Icaris to get us some prized amalgams. So the idea is to just try and make a bunch of guys like this, and we're going to try and dredge through as many creeping chills as possible, which is an innovation from modern dredge. I remember when it came out, and I was actually still playing modern back then. So the idea is that you can get 9, maybe 12 damage off of creeping chills over the course of a game, so you don't actually have to hit them for that much. Now, I'm not convinced necessarily this is going to be enough creatures, but like I said, this was a 5.0 deck list, so no Cabal Therapies, no bridge from below. That's a lot to be missing out on in my opinion, but we're going to see how it goes. As for the sideboard, we've got some ley lines for graveyard matchups. We've got the white ley line for graveyard hate that targets us, things like Soul Guide Lantern, Tormod's Crypt, that sort of thing. So because we're only playing blue and red spells, it means that our sideboard cards are going to have to be different to reflect that. So we've got Firestorm, which is really useful against all these sort of white weenie decks like Death Taxes, but can also do work against goblins if you let them expand the board a little bit and then you sort of crush everything they've got and then just dredge really hard. And then our way of removing things that are in play, we've got 4 Chain of Vapors and a Kiora's Dismissal. Now I'm not convinced necessarily, because you do have the issue of things like Chalice, which is going to be very hard to deal with. But I guess if we can get something into our graveyard, we can keep dredging through with Chalice is the idea. So maybe we'll be fine on that. And then we also have, because we're playing enough blue cards, we've got a couple of Force of Wills. For when we don't necessarily know what our opponent's playing, the Force of Will is quite good, because we can just board them in and we can just try and deal with whatever the thing is. Obviously, if it's a ley line, we're going to need some of the bounce effects. And then we also have this little Dread Return package of Flare of the Hatebound, which means we can play the Flare of the Hatebound, and then as all these creatures come back, we'll start doming them for a lot of damage. That's basically the plan. I'm not really sure how this one's going to go. It's quite new to me and I'm quite excited to try it out. I've always been a big lover of Dredge because it plays on a completely different axis to the rest of Magic the Gathering. It's not even the same game half the time. So we're going to be looking for Lion's Eye Diamond, Explosive Hands, and just try and go off. So let's get into a league. But before we do that, why not subscribe to my channel? It would really help me out and it doesn't cost you anything. Alright, plug done. Let's go and get into a league. So this is our hand on game 1 and we're on the play. We certainly have some options available to us here. So if we keep this hand, we can cast Careful Study and then crack the Lion's Eye Diamond in response and bin a load of cards off. Our opponent is a 60 card deck, so we don't have a great deal amount of information. There's no Yorions there. But I think we can keep this one, and we have basically 2 attempts to put things in the graveyard with Lion's Eye Diamond and Careful Study. So we can keep this. Our opponent is beginning on 6 cards. So we're going to play out our Mana Confluence. We're going to play out our Lion's Eye Diamond. We're going to hold priority, and then we're going to cast this Careful Study. And in response, we're going to crack this for red, so we can cast a Faithless Looting if we find one. We don't have the most impressive of dredges in Golgari Thug, but hopefully it will find us something else. And a Stinkweed Imp. Sure, so there's the Faithless Looting. Then we're going to discard these 2. Can resolve this Creeping Chill. Flashback this Faithless Looting. Maybe should I flash back the Ox? I don't think I want to exile the things in my graveyard to make the Ox. So our graveyard is quite stacked right now. So discard these two. Let's pop our graveyard out and make sure we have a little look. So next turn we can start bringing back a load of creatures. So as long as our opponent doesn't have something like a turn 1 Soul Guide Lantern, I think we'll be okay here. How many Icarids do we have? 1, 2, 3 Icarids. Okay. And we've dredged half of our deck. We're very much face up about what we're doing here. Okay, so they're on Reanimators, so they can do... Oh no, they're on Goblins. Okay, so they can do some things that aren't quite as impressive as what we're doing here, so that's nice. But they might have ley lines in the sideboard. Okay, so we have some Icarid triggers. Get rid of a Grief. It's a free one. We can get rid of another Grief. And we can probably get rid of this Thug as well. The Thug is the worst of the dredges anyway. We'll dredge this. I'll go Grave Troll. Hit him for another 3. Also gives us a lot more life to work with. Can't really do anything here. So I think we go to attacks. We have a lot of triggers here. Okay, so they can hit us with a Muxus and do some pretty outrageous things, but they will need some blockers. They can definitely make blockers this turn. How many Icarids can we actually realistically bring back? We got 1 Imp, 2 Imp, 3 Imp, and we got 4 Icarids, so we can bring back whatever we need here, depending on what our opponent does. This could be the more combo-y version of Goblins, so they could be trying to play the Lord and then sacrifice a load of creatures to dig in their deck until they find their Sling Gang Lieutenant, so they can combo us out that way. Let's see how bad the damage is from the Lackey. Pashalik Mons. Okay, that's a fine one. 3, so we can get rid of 2 Stinkweed Imps, and we'll try and win this turn, I think. And the other one can get rid of this last Icarid. And that'll be enough blockers. They'll have 3 blockers, and I'll have 2 3-power attackers coming through. That should be enough. And we dredge the Imp. Okay, we found a Creeping Chill as well, just to really hammer it home. So this looks good to me. Alright, that was quite an impressive little display. Let's go on to the sideboard. So Goblins decks could certainly be running ley lines. But because they're a creature deck, these Firestorms are looking pretty good to me. They're going to replace one of our other discard outlets. Because we're more worried about them starting with something in play, it means that the Force of Wills here are bad. I don't think we're necessarily going to need Flair of the Hate Bounds. So there could be a Surgical Extraction deck. I don't really think we're going to know for a while. So I think what we do is we probably hedge a little bit and see. Because I seem to recall them not having a lot of graveyard hate, generally speaking. So we'll have a couple of these in. So our Firestorm's probably just going to be better than a Careful Study here. So we can get rid of those. Probably just trim on some of our other bit. Like, I'm not sure how useful the Grief's going to be here. Like, it'd be good if they do have Surgicals, but we're bringing in the Chains of Vapor. So maybe we can trim on that. And we can probably trim on 1 Dredger. So we can't. Maybe we can trim on an Ox. I think this is probably going to be what we're going to go with. Let's see how we go. Feel we have the need. So the Leyline Sanctity can stop some of their combo shenanigans. I think we're just faster and we just want to go harder. So let's try this. So we're going to keep this opening hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw and discard out Stinkweed Imp and just hold back our land and a Firestorm because they're a Wasteland deck. So we can dredge a little bit and then Wasteland. Okay, so they do have the Leyline of the Void. That's less good for us. I did board in 2 of our answers for it. But will that be enough? So we have Faithless Looting here, so we can start casting things like Faithless Looting to try and dig to our bounce spells, which I think is probably where we have to be here. Unfortunately, it does play into Wasteland a little bit. It's not really where we want to be. So we can keep the Lion's Eye Diamond for when we really are ready to go off. If we can answer that, we can really go off there. I don't think we need 2 breakthroughs, although breakthroughs are a very good way of digging into more answers here, because we found the second land. I think we pitched the Thug here. If we have to use the breakthroughs then to dig, then that's what we'll have to do, which isn't ideal. But if our opponent isn't making threats because they went hard on trying to find a leyline hand, that's fine by me. All right, it's going to be a bit of an uphill slog, this one. Okay, so they've got ports, so they can just port us down if that's something they want to do. A War Marshal. That's not a particularly threatening goblin. A Cephalid Colosseum. So I don't actually think I want to just break through for 2. We want to keep enough cards in our hand that we can have a good Firestorm if we need it. So I think we just pass the turn here. Like, we're not under a great deal of pressure just yet. If this was a lackey or something, then I'd have to go a lot harder and try and find answers to this. But that's not the situation we're in right now. Okay, so there's Wasteland. They're just playing out a squee. It's not the scariest of clocks. Just makes an additional 1/1, doesn't it? Like a bad Rabble Master. Okay, so now we have this. I think we're priced into playing a breakthrough. Play out the Lion's Eye Diamond for later. We cast a breakthrough where X is 2. So we haven't hit either of the things that I was hoping to hit. So we can start just playing out a 3/3 and just roadblocking them with that, which I don't hate. Ooh, the Firestorm's probably not going to do it for us anymore, is it? So I think we want to keep a 3/3 that we can play. And we want to keep a Dredger for if we find the answer. Oh, it's discard 6 cards, isn't it? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So next turn we're going to play out the Amalgam, and hopefully that can block some of their guys. But again, they can just start wastelanding and porting us. So the chances of us being dead here are very high. But at least we know what hate piece we're beating. And they basically have to mulligan to it for game 3. Okay. That's our land in trouble. And another one. So if we draw the bounce spell, we're still... well, if they keep their port up, then we haven't really got a lot of recourse there. So they're going to port down our Confluence. And then we're going to draw something that's not going to be relevant, probably. And then we're going to lose the game next turn. So we can just concede this one. Alright, so we have to beat a ley line. So we need all of our bounce spells in for this. Bring these 3 in. We're going to bring out the 2 Firestorms. We're less in need of them because we're beyond the play. The Grief seems less relevant now because we know what their hate piece is. So we just have our 5 bounce spells for it, and then the rest of the deck can just run its engine as per usual. Are we in the market for something like a Flayer of the Hatebound and the Dread Return instead of the Griefs? I think that's probably going to be fine here. So this can give us something to machine gun down their guys. I think this is fine. Because 2 Grief I don't think is going to be relevant. We don't care about their hand too much in this matchup. Sure, submit. Oh, this is an interesting one. So we keep, we Chain of Vapor, and then we discard Stinkweed Imp. Because they're probably going to mulligan quite heavily to Leyline because they lose this matchup if they don't do that. So we have a bit more time to play out the Cephalid Colosseum, bounce something, and then draw discard, ideally. If we can find a Lion's Eye Diamond, then that'd be very good for us. They didn't actually start with a Leyline in play. That's interesting to me. So that changes the dynamic here. I'm actually just going to pass the turn here and then discard at the end of my second turn. If our opponent does something we have to worry about, then we can... how worrying would the Muxus be? Narcomoeba isn't a great draw. So they've only got 4 cards in hand, but a Muxus Lackey is certainly one of the things they would keep over a Leyline in terms of their hand. I don't think playing this out and bouncing is really going to get us anywhere. I think what we have to do is discard this Stinkweed Imp, and then next turn we have a breakthrough turn and we hope that we hit enough. They might not have the Muxus. They might have something else to put in off their Lackey. But we're sort of at their mercy this turn. What do they have? It was the Muxus. The Muxus could always swing and miss. Okay, that's fine. That doesn't really do too much. I think what we're going to be doing next turn is going to be scarier. The only issue is how big the Muxus can be when it hits us next turn. But we have the Creeping Chills to pad our life total. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm taking next turn if they don't play any other spells. Sure, so this is 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So this is lethal that they've put on board now, which is not great for us. We didn't hit any dredges, which is pretty bad. So we have to play this out. And we have to Chain of Vapor their Muxus. Which means they just get to put it in again, but that's the only way we don't die this turn, which is awful. Truth be told. Yeah, that was a decidedly poor hit with the old Stinkweed Imp there. I assume they're just going to pay because this represents 3 damage. No, they're going to let it go. They had lethal on board, so that's odd to me that they wouldn't pay there. Especially if they're not having an attack in this turn. Right, so we get to bounce the Muxus. They get to put it back in with Lackey, so that's bad for us. We need to draw a Lion's Eye Diamond this turn, I think. Lion's Eye Diamond into Ox of Agonis, being one of the cards that we get off the breakthrough. Oh, we have no plays, which is F6 this turn. See, this is where the Bridge from Belows would come in handy in the matchup, because I'd be able to field a load of guys and chump block stuff. But that's not an option I'm going to get with this particular build of the deck. They're going to get a lot more damage on the board because they're going to replay the Muxus. Could miss. It won't miss, but it could miss. Wowzers. Okay, I think I'm just dead this turn, right? Oh, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think they have exactly a lethal here. They can certainly go and get more with the Goblin Matron. I think I'm just going to concede here. If I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, including itself. Is it another Goblin? No, it's any Goblin. Sure. So we are dead. That was a bit of a failure. We had the thing to play around their ley line. Our hand was a little bit slow and we missed on the dredges. So if we'd have hit dredger, then we could have breakthrough'd and maybe hit, basically done the top of our deck, most of it. So we get 6 life at least, I reckon, off of a Creeping Chill if you mill half your deck. But that's not what happened. So a loss in the books, but we're going to go to the next round. This hand is missing a dredger, so we can't keep it. This hand has a dredger. I'd really like a mana source, because otherwise we're just playing this out and hoping that we can either dredge 6 cards a turn, or we can hold out to draw a land. Those are our options. Neither of which feels great to me, but I suppose we can see what our opponent's on. They're a 60 card deck, so we can keep this hand and see. I suppose we press the keep button and put the Careful Study back. So we can play out the Lion's Eye Diamond, and then if our opponent does things that mean that we need to put the dredger in now, we can, and if not, we can wait. So the ball is in our opponent's court a little bit here. Let's see what they make. A Mox Diamond, okay. So this is giving me lands impression. The chances are they're going to have a Paducah Bog in their deck, is what this says to me. If they have a Paducah Bog in their deck, trying to dredge 1 card a turn isn't going to work. We have to draw a land and go big here. We need to have a nice big turn and put a load of power into play. Okay, so we've been rewarded for this. I like it when that happens. So we play out this Fiery Islet. So we'll hold control for blue. Time to cast this. Let me crack this for triple red. And then we try and do some dredging. So they can potentially crop rotation the Dark Depths away and get a Paducah Bog. Always yield to this, always yield to this. So let's have a look. So they're Paducah Bogging now. Yeah, this was certainly one of the things we feared happening, but at least we've got rid of their Dark Depths, I suppose. Pretty bad day for Dredge by the looks of it. So we get absolutely nothing. So the chances of us winning this game are about, I don't know, 1%, if that. So we lost 3. What did we even lose here? We lost so many of the things we require. So we lost 2 Icarids, 3 Icarids, 1 of our prized amalgams, 2 of our prized amalgams, 3 of our trolls, Stinkweed Imp, 3 of our Creeping Chills. There's virtually nothing left in our deck that we can even dredge. Pretty grim when you lose game 1 with Dredge, which is one of the reasons why Dredge has completely fallen off the map for Legacy. Hopefully the new card from the Warhammer 40k set, that's kind of like another prized amalgam type effect, will be something that will really help out and maybe give Dredge enough. So we just have yet another guy that can bring back. So this is also an example of why people have been going on to the mannerless dredge, because you don't just pitch your whole hand to breakthroughs and lines like diamonds with mannerless dredge. Okay, so that was an incredibly miserable and depressing thing to have happened. So we have Leyline of Sanctity. Now, are they going to be playing their own ley lines here? Is the question. They're going to be a Life from the Loam deck, so our ley lines will be useful here, but I don't necessarily think we're going to be caring too much about that. We could try and board in these Force of Wills to deal with the crop rotations. I don't think they're going to have ley line if they've got crop rotation as well. It just seems a bit excessive. So the Greaves can pick apart a crop rotation before I go. I think it's... we take away some of our red cards because we want to keep our blue count high. And then we probably have to trim... maybe it's one of our Creeping Chills or the Fourth Icarage. I don't have a lot of confidence in this matchup. They have Graveyard Hate at their disposal pretty early on. They shouldn't be a leyline deck because the way their deck's configured is naturally good against graveyard decks already. But they might have something like a Grafdigger's Cage or something like that, perhaps, to chew off the Urza's Saga. So hopefully we can get everything done before the Urza's Saga will tick down. So I don't really want to board these in for that. They probably have a Scavenging Ooze if they're the green-white depths deck. So I think we'll submit like this and hope that our sideboard cards can do something. Okay, so we have a Force of Will that we can't do anything with, which is certainly something that I feared might happen. We can Grief and then put 2 dredges in the bin. Is that good enough? Doesn't look great to me. Like if they show us 2 crop rotations, then that's completely kaput and does nothing. But we do have a way of disrupting their hands. I think we do have to keep this. It's just really ugly. So we Grief pitching the... depends how... So we play out this. Play out this. We cast this. Targeting them. What is the black card that we want to discard? Do we think we're going to hit another Dredger? I think we have to get rid of the Icarage here. We don't need to crack the lines like diamond yet. What do we have? What are we looking at from our opponent? So they have a Grafdigger's Cage and a crop rotation. So that's pretty bad for us. So I think we have to take the Grafdigger's Cage here because they'll sit on the crop rotation so we can draw up and maybe hit a blue card for our Force of Will. So we're not in an ideal situation. There's no point cracking this because they can just completely stop what we're doing with their land and their crop rotation. All right, but it does mean they have to basically hold up their green mana indefinitely, which isn't the worst for us. And so hopefully if we draw a blue card... Okay, so we have a breakthrough. So we have the Force of Will to stop them doing it, but we can't play the Force of Will without cracking the lines like diamond to get these things in the grave in the first place. So this is a good example of why I wasn't particularly happy with the Force of Wills in the sideboard. Can't actually use them. Like, it's alright to stop things on like early turns. Like if you're on the draw maybe. I think we're just in a situation where these aren't going to do anything unless... If this was Careful Study, then that would be perfect. Well, potentially perfect. Okay, so they've wastelanded us off of that as well. So I think we're in the situation of drawing up until we can discard a Grave Troll. And then we Force of Will the spell they have. So we got rid of this. And Saga's gone and the Foothill's gone. This is our plan now. We have to draw up, naturally discard, just to make sure our Stingweed Imp goes off. And this might be able to find another piece of Graveyard Hate anyway. So we are in real trouble here. It does mean the next turn we can Ox of Agonis off of our Lion's Eye Diamond though. But that might just be too slow for what our opponent's doing here. If they get another piece of Graveyard Hate, then I think it's game over. They got Soul Guide Lantern, that's usually the other one they tend to have because it cantrips, so it's the main deckable one. Shadow Spit, okay, they're just going to go for a little racing. Okay, that's a relatively big body. Bidding off the Mazavith, sure. They're getting for 5 this turn. Next turn they get in for 9. Yeah, this is looking pretty bad for us. Exploration, sure, that doesn't impact what I'm doing. There's the Dark Depths. So we can't really go all in on the Oxyvagonus anyway. So let us dredge now. So the problem is if we crack this to play out the Oxyvagonus, it needs 8, doesn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we could do that, but the issue is they can crop rotation in response. So this Force of Will looks pretty awful. We click done, and then they tap their Wooded Foothills, go and get themselves a forest. Sure. Yep, here it comes. And then we're dead on board. Yep, so that was showing that the sideboard for this deck doesn't actually work, in my opinion. I don't think Force of Will is something you should be putting in dredge decks. Manaless Dredge, maybe, but if you're playing Lion's Eye Diamond in your deck and Breakthrough, I don't think you can realistically have a Force of Will in your deck. Alright, so we're into the third round, and this is the opening hand we've been dealt. So I'm on the draw, so I can just discard this end of turn and then untap Breakthrough, which I don't hate. Yeah, I think we can just about keep this one. It's not very explosive, unfortunately, but I don't know, I feel somewhat cowed by the previous events. Alright, so this is Underground Sea. This could be Thought Seizing me. Okay, so we're going to not be able to do the draw discard plan. Excellent. So we're going to lose the Breakthrough here. Our opponent could be Doomsday. That would be my guess. So this can't hit yourself to put things in the graveyard, so I could draw up next turn and discard, which is still the better plan, sadly. So we are quite far behind now. So if our opponent is a combo deck, which Underground Sea is largely a combo deck piece these days, then we're not in a particularly lovely spot. Well, if they have a counter spell now, they can just do this. So I think we actually still just go to the plan of discard this at end of turn. Next turn we untap, try and Faithless Looting. So if they are a control deck, then we might be alright because they'll be too slow to deal with it. Like Dredge is always traditionally very good against control decks, in my experience at least. Ponder, Brainstorm. So these cards could be in any deck with blue-black mana, but the fact they've got 2 Underground Seas makes me think they're more likely to be Doomsday than someone like Grixis or Espervile or something like that. Okay, so let's get this. Always yield to these. Let's pop our graveyard up here to have a look at it. Okay. Okay, so this is looking more like Death Shadow now then. If they've got, so they could stifle one of these triggers. Sure. Kind of shows the realm they're living in at the moment. So I think we play out this Fiery Islet. And then we cast this, exiling the Creeping Chill because this doesn't do anything in our hand. So let's see what they've got. So this should hopefully let us cast Faithless Looting this turn. The Murktide Regent is an irrelevant threat, so we get rid of the Stubborn Denial here. Pop this out so we know what they got. And we cast this, tapping this for red. So we've got Stinkweed Imp that we can dredge. And we only have a Thug here. But then we can get rid of the Grave Troll and the Imp. And always yield to these and use its ability. So I've turned on their Death Shadow. Particularly a problem for me. They can play Murktide Regent next turn, but I don't think I care about Murktide Regent. Okay, so they can wasteland me here? Yeah, sure. Like, it didn't really matter which one I played out because I'm never going to draw another land this game. So always yield to this. And then we'll replace our draw with a Grave Troll. Okay, so this is pretty nice. Puts into 4. We can play this out. It's not a great need to. So we can force 1 point of damage through this turn. If I attack with these two, they're just not going to. So I think we just wait, and then next turn we bring everything back. So they can't really attack this turn. So next turn we have 2 Icarids. So this can block the Death Shadow or the Murktide Regent, depending on which I feel is more of a threat at the time. It's almost certainly going to be a Death Shadow. But they might not be able to attack here. Okay, they're not even attacking here. So they need another threat. I say threat, I mean blocker at this point. Just got another grief to get rid of. And there's another grief there. And then we dredge this. Hit an Archimedes, that's good. We're going to bring back some prized amalgams. And if we satch with everything, we put 4 damage through, which is lethal, so I think we want to do that. So they can have a removal spell here, so it could be a fatal push. They're just going to concede. Okay. Death Shadow. So a quick look tells me that Death Shadow plays Grafdigger's Cage, and it plays Surgical Extraction. Now, these can deal with Grafdigger's Cage in theory, and this can, as we've discussed, I'm not a big fan of the Force of Wills here, so I think we're boarding these chains available. I guess maybe the answer is to board out breakthroughs so that Force of Wills are better, but again, you still got Lion's Eye Diamond there, so I'm not really convinced. And we just need to trim, so the griefs are going to be good to pick apart the Surging Extractions. So do we need Ox of Agonis? I think the Creeping Chills are very good because they want to lower their own life total, so this means we can just get them. So I think I think this build definitely needs its Ichorids more than other builds. Maybe we don't need 5 bounce spells for the 1 Grafdigger's Cage we're expecting, so maybe we can... this only bounces enchantments, doesn't it? So yeah, so let's just take the Chain of Vapors. So what does this hand do? It doesn't have any dredges, so it doesn't do anything. So we need to take another hand. This hand is very explosive, and I also have a way of picking apart a surgical, so this has got everything we want, I think. So we keep this. So we need the Fates of Looting, the Lion's Eye Diamond, we need this, and we need a black card, which means the only card that we can put back is the Ox, which is fine because we can Fates Looting anyway. If they play a turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage, we are in trouble. They did not play a turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage. So we play out this Fiery Islet first. We cast this and we exile the Creeping Chill because you want the Ichorid in our graveyard. Is there a Surgical Extraction or something that I need to worry about? Hydroblast. Hydroblast is interesting. I think we take the Hydroblast. So they can brainstorm into something here, but that is just the price we pay. Hold control, add red, cast this, sacrifice this for triple red. Let's go! Hopefully. Yeah, I thought this would get action. So it could be a Surgical Extraction, which would be very bad for us. So they could brainstorm into Surgical. Death Shadow decks tend to run 2 Surgicals from when I looked online. Okay, so not doing anything. Discard these 2. Always yield to this. Always yield to this. Cast a flashback. And this. And we discard these. Always yield to this. Yes, I would like to drain you for 3. Yes, I would like an Archimedes. Go to end of turn, get some prized amalgams back. Seems like a fine turn to me. 8 power on turn 1. See, this used to be an incredible start, 8 power on turn 1, but now I think the power level of Legacy is so high that that's not the be-all and end-all these days. Cycling. Cycling. So their Death Shadow's alive now. Okay, they've just conceded. So that was a bit better. They didn't have main deck graveyard hate, so we managed to get game 1, and they didn't have a ley line, so that was nice. And we just had simple sideboard of Chain of Vapor, like the good old days. Alright, let's go into another round. Okay, so this is the opening hand we've been dealt. We have this grief that we probably won't be able to use, but we are on the draw, so maybe we will draw a black card for it, or a pitch spell. We're kind of looking at Lion's Eye Diamond into activate Fiery Islet, hope to hit a Feathers Looting. It's about the best this does, but it's fine. We can always draw up and discard end of turn if that's how we feel. So we will keep this. Our opponent is a 60 card deck as well. Okay, so they just play Polluted Delta and pass. So I think we're actually just going to go to discard end of turn and put this Stinkweed Imp in the bin. So this could be another Death Shadow deck. It could be a Doomsday deck. Those are the 2 that I'm most expecting, because the Esper Viley type decks tend to have Yorion in. This could also be Storm. Okay, Grixis. Pop our graveyard out. I'm pausing on our upkeep, which doesn't fill me with a great amount of joy. So we have a Thug and a troll. I think we can play this out. Play this out. I think we can grief this turn and use the 2 dredges in there. Sure, that's fine by me. We'll cast this, exile this. See what you got. A Dak Faden and a Lightning Bolt. Honestly, I think we take the Lightning Bolt here. If our opponent's tapping out for Dak Faden, that's fine by me. Okay, so let's pop out there. Revealed hands. Okay, so we can cast this. And then we aren't doing anything with a mana in our hand here. So we activate this for triple red. And then we draw a card. Okay, they're ending it there because I'm going to do that and then Oxford Gonus. So I'm going to get to dredge 4 times this turn, which should be able to put at least 10 power into play, I would imagine. Or at least for the next turn, I'll be attacking with 10 power. Grixis. Not a clue what's going to be in this deck, if I'm honest with you. I think we just have to assume the worst and board in the Chain of Vapors here. There's usually a safe board. Like, we need to keep these in because they've got counter spells, and these are quite nice at picking it through to make sure our things get there. I don't think we're in the market for the Dread Return type stuff. Alright, so probably just going down on those. Probably trimming an Ox and leaving it like that. So that gives us a way of bouncing a ley line and griefing away a Surgical Extraction, which would be what I would imagine would be there. And we can bounce away another permanent if they have one. I'm surprised there's not anything like an Ingot Chewer in this list, because Ingot Chewer is quite a good way of getting around things like Chalice, as well as blowing up Grafdigger's cages and Soulguide Lanterns and things like that. So I think we'll submit like this. So they're going to keep in their Hidetsugu's Consumes All, or whatever it's called. Okay, so this hand allows me to grief, but at the cost of my Dredger. Or I can just draw a discard and then see how we lie. So I think I like this one still. Yeah, so they're probably going to keep in their thing that blows up 0 and 1 drops, because they think I'm going to have Bridge and Belows in my deck. So there's a little bit of extra value there. It's going to have a few dead cards. Okay, so I think we play this out. So we can play out the Lion's Eye Diamond now. We can also grief them, getting rid of our Amalgam, which I don't hate as a play here. We're kind of all in on Thug to find us some more cards, but we can spin the looting twice if we need to. So let's do this. Let's get rid of the Amalgam and see what they got going on. Okay, they can brainstorm if they like. If they're putting away things, it means they can't interact with me on this turn. What do we have here? Brainstorm, Force of Will. Okay, so we get rid of the Force of Will. We play out the Lion's Eye Diamond. We hold control. Crack this for triple red. Hopefully the Thug will hit. Okay, it did hit. That's good for us. And we discard these 2, and then we do all over again. Always yield to this. Yes. Flashes back. This is the power of a Lion's Eye Diamond. Relatively weak, actually. Not the most exciting there. So we're going to get back a couple of guys. So we made 7 power on turn 1. So they got Bayou as well, which I didn't see in game 1. So they can have some sort of horrible crop rotation-y line here, which would make me unhappy. But it seems unlikely in this order. Okay, so they're just burning out all their cantrips, looking for something. So we'll yield to these. Let's get some guys, shall we? Okay, they're conceding because I'm getting 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 damage, which is exactly lethal. Nice. Okay, that's a bit more like it. We're on the board with 2 victories now. So was that 1 more round to go, I think? So let's crack on with it. It's been a lightning fast league. Okay, so I'm on the die roll for the final round. Our opening hand allows us to Lion's Eye Diamond, Faithless Looting on turn 1. So I think this is fine. We get to grief them first as well. So yeah, I'm going to keep this. I get 2 dredges on turn 1. Our opponent is a 60 card deck. Let's see how we do with the grief. Huh. They conceded immediately. Interesting. I guess we go to the sideboard. So I have 0 idea what my opponent's playing, but if they saw a grief on turn 1, they're probably going to assume I'm playing Reanimator. because that's more common than Dredge for sure. So they're probably going to be bringing in ley lines. So I think we pop these in, get rid of the breakthroughs, get rid of a couple of oxes, and call it done, I think. And we can reappraise for game 3. The minimum amount of information is not a terrible play there for them. So they could have just been a combo deck that was going to go off on turn 1, but if I took one piece, they were completely like down and out. But I'm not sure. It's probably more likely to be reanimator and they're trying to conceal what they are. They think I'm reanimator and they just want to conceal what they're playing because their reanimator matchup's bad like most decks. So I submit. So we have an answer to leyline. We have a way of putting our troll in the bin. It's not very exciting, but I think we keep it given what happened in the first game to me. So we're going to just draw up and discard the grave troll, I think. A ponder. But we're underground seeing again. So this could be Grixis, could be Doomsday. Okay, so we're just going to discard our grave troll here. Okay, I guess we draw this. They're going to let us have it. So we have a Faith is Looting there if that's something we want. But I think because we have another Grave Troll, we can just play out the Colosseums and use those. That also gives us the interaction of Chain of Vapor if we need it. Bizarrely, this is one of the sort of games where the Force of Will would actually be okay. So I think we play this out. I don't think we want to play out the Lion's Eye Diamond in case we have to draw and discard later. And I don't think we try and go for the all-in play of the Faith is Looting into a blue deck that's holding open mana. Especially when we have very little idea what our opponent is doing, given the fact that they just conceded immediately on turn 1 last time. Okay, so we've finally got a bit of action on this side. A Flooded Strand being cracked. So another Underground Sea. It's definitely giving me Death Shadow vibes. Oh no, it's Blue-Black Reanimator. So they could be getting Coffin Purge here. No, they're just going straight for the Grizzlebrand. Sure. So if they make a Grizzlebrand this turn, we will Chain of Vapor at end of turn. Also, if they cast an Exhume, it removes one of my dredges, which is not nothing. Exhume. Sure. Guess we put the Thug in. So we can bounce this in response to the first draw, so they're less likely to have a counter spell. They might just be holding it back anyway. Putting this back in their hand is actually quite a roadblock for them because it means they have to go through the loop of putting it in the graveyard and doing it all over again. Okay, so we're getting a Force of Will. We'll dredge this. Okay, so I think we play out this. Play out this Lion's Eye Diamond. They have a Force of Will. I have to imagine it's going on this. Let's see if we can get rid of this Grizzlebrand. This might be difficult to deal with if they can stop me chaining a Vapor here. We don't want them to have a 7/7 in play with lifelink. That is a problem for us. Like, we might just be able to chain enough Creeping Chills. If we hit 3 Creeping Chills, we just take them out. Okay, so we discard this for triple red. Flash this back. Our opponent hasn't F6 yet, so this could be a counterspell on this. This isn't really too much. The 3 life is good here, but the Narcomoeba is not the most exciting. So it's not bringing anything back with it. I haven't got any of the 3/3 guy who's now just prized amalgam. There's none of those in the bin. So you can put them to 3 here. And you have 10 cards in hand. They might also just be the Tin Fins decks. They might just be able to combo off and storm me this turn, which is certainly a thing that could happen. We're not going to replay, so let's just leave them to it and see how we go. So we want to set a stop in our upkeep here because we do this in our upkeep to dredge to make sure there's a dredger in the bin before we move to our draw step because this discards as well. Snow-covered swamp. Show and tell. Okay, you can have a Grizzlebrand again. Is that going to be enough? I don't think so, because I only have to hit 1 more of my Creeping Chills here. And I'm going to dredge 4 times this turn. And there's only 28 cards in my deck. So it's not mathematically guaranteed, but it's pretty good. You can do Grief Thug here. And then this should see us the rest of our library. So we've got 16 cards left. Keep going. Did not hit the other Creeping Chill. Let's go and trigger all of these guys. And we get one more Dredge, which hopefully will hit us into the Creeping Chill just to put the game away. So we've got 10 cards. We need to hit one of our 2 Creeping Chills, I think it is. Yes, we've got a 2 in 10 chance. We've got 1 in 5 chance for every card we flip over, and we're going to flip over 6 cards in a second. So statistically, we're likely to win in a second. In our draw step, in fact. Surgical Extraction. What is this targeting? The Prized Amalgam. And let's put them to 1. Sure, that's not how I was planning on winning this game anyway. This is a pretty horrible misplay because they can use this on the Creeping Chill to stop the Creeping Chill getting them. I think we still dredge this. Okay, so we have 2 Creeping Chills. Just misplayed into giving me the win. I'd quite like the win. Okay, so they misplayed to give me the win there. Alright, I'm not sure how that game would have actually panned out if I had a bunch of 3/3s instead. So they could gain 7, but I'd have 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Yeah, so I think I'd kill them either way there. They needed 2 Surgical Extractions, but they only had the life to pay for one of them anyway. So yeah, alright. 3-2, let's go to the deck. This is the deck. Obviously, the first couple of rounds were pretty annoying. They weren't great. I don't think some of the cards in the sideboard were ideal. For example, I'm not convinced on the Force of Will. Like, yes, you can board out the Breakthrough. But again, that's some of your blue cards you're boarding out for the Force of Will. So it just doesn't seem like a good strategy to me. I'm not really sure that Force of Will and Dredge are the best of friends. Certainly not Force of Will and Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge. That just doesn't seem right to me. We certainly had some explosive turns, but I think like the most explosive thing we were doing was making like 7 or 8 power on turn 1. Obviously, you know, we're building up for future turns as well. But making them discard and making 7 or 8 power is kind of child's play compared to what the Reanimator deck does, because that can just throw a Grizzlebrand and make you discard your whole hand pretty much on turn 1. So it's obviously a way more powerful graveyard deck. And because of that, a lot of the graveyard hate is in people's sideboards ready for us anyway. I've always been a fan of Cephalid Colosseum, so I quite like Fiery Islet jumping in that slot, but I think losing things like Nature's Claim and Wispmare because you don't have a lot of rainbow lands is certainly an issue. With the tools we have in our sideboard, we've got a handful of 1-drops and these Force of Wills, and I don't really think that's a good enough sideboard, really, because against prison decks, they're just going to chalice you out and then shut down your graveyard and you're in trouble. I do like the Creeping Chills, though. The Creeping Chills are excellent, and I would definitely want to play a deck with Creeping Chills in again. But I'm just not sure that this is the optimal build for Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge right now. I think the deck I played the other day was slightly better, or the other week or whenever it was, when I played a more sort of stock traditional Dredge deck with, you know, with your Bridge from Belows and your Cabal Therapies. I just feel that being able to put out a load of tokens and go wide is really, really good, whereas the Amalgams and the Icarids don't necessarily go as wide. In an ideal world, perhaps a deck where you have them all, but I'm not really sure what that would look like, especially when we've got the new one from the Warhammer 40k set coming out that is kind of like Prize Amalgam. So that would be another option to have. I think that one is whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard, perhaps. So you want it in a Cabal Therapy Dread Return shell. Obviously, Ox of Agonis and Faithless Looting can still do that for you. But I think that would probably be where I'd look to go next. Manaless Dredge, I think at the moment, is better for the reasons we discussed earlier. The fact that you can draw, discard, and then pitch your cards that way, and not have to worry about getting sort of jammed up by pitching your whole hand and then being able to crop rotation you. You can rebuild a lot better, I think, with Manaless Dredge, purely because you're not discarding your whole hand. You're sort of like flipping between your Phantasmagoriums to just get things that you need in the graveyard at the time, and you have a lot more hits in Manaless Dredge because it's manaless. You're not wasting all these slots on mana, and you've got a whole bunch of just more things to hit when you start dredging. So your dredges in Manaless Dredge are better, which is why you can kind of afford to like draw, discard, and the only real thing you have to accelerate your dredging is the Street Wraith, which is nice. I like the Street Wraith to do that, but I think it's a little bit more. Weirdly, it has slightly more longevity playing it than something like Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge, but obviously it's not as explosive. Anything else to say? We never got to do any Flare of the Headbound shenanigans, which is a shame because that's quite a fun little thing you can do. So I think next time I play a dredge on my channel, I'm probably going to play Manaless Dredge and give that a whirl and see how that operates, especially because there's so many free spells now, or the Force of Vigor type things. There's so many free ways of being able to interact with your opponent that you don't have to worry about the having your mana to cast your spells and so on and so forth. So maybe LED Dredge could take some sort of page out of that book. I guess that's what they're trying to do with the Force of Will here. I'm just not convinced it's where you want to be with a deck that wants to discard its hand. Alright, I think I've talked about this enough. The first few rounds were a bit miserable, but I had a bit more fun time as it went on. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please subscribe because that really helps me out. So yeah, thanks for watching and goodbye.